Hello everyone and welcome to a new episode of Velocity Kinetics. Apologies about the way this one's starting. Bad light and things. I just had an idea and I wanted to record a start of a video, give me something to reference back later. Just about to head up to bed. Izzy is... well, Izzy, good loaf. Nice tuck. No tail. Paws in. Skittish as anything. Unloafed. You were on a 9 out of 10 loaf there, Izzy. She's warming up slowly. But anyway, apologies about some lack of content recently. It's just, I don't know what it is. I don't know whether I've run out of steam with Velocity Kinetics, as in it just being me and having to work it all out myself is just finally taking its toll, or whether life work is getting in the way. I know recently mental health has not been my strong point, so I've not been too good, and in some of these videos you might see that I'm starting to hopefully visibly thin out. So I've started a weight loss thing, so this is an NHS weight loss program, and hopefully I can make it stick and things be more permanent. God knows I hate being this fat. Heck, I look back at some of the old videos and I was fat then, but compared to now, skinny as anything, although I felt fatter then than I do now. But who knows? But anyway, life aside, talk about my Swace a little bit. Sort of life and adventures, really. It's just had its 27,000 mile / 2 year service. After a few escapades, shall we say, that I've gotten lucky with. So just talk about how it is, where it's going, and what next for the oldie Swace. So one of the escapades the Swace was recently involved in, I can't actually show you the footage for. Not because it's illegal, but because it it's illegal. It's not illegal in the sense of, as far as I'm aware, I have not done anything illegal. But the other driver in the video, I've had to report to DVLA. But in a nutshell, a little after junction 15 on the M25, relatively recently, driving along after we'd been in the smart motorway section of the M25, which, as anyone knows about smart motorways, is a waste of fucking time. The theory's right, but the execution is piss poor, done with the sheer goal of money. My weird noise in the background. Hi, George. Yeah, the bed could have done with being made this morning, but Sarah's on a night shift, so she slept late, and there we are. So a little after junction 15, where the end of the smart motorway had started to increase the speed limit. I can't remember if we were at 60 or 65, as in I can't remember whether if it was still 60 or whether it had ended the speed limit and said it was back to national speed limit. But from a little around 60 miles an hour, this car in front of me missed its exit, or it turns out it missed its exit, and just decided to do an emergency stop in lane 2. Now, bearing in mind there are 2 other slip roads to the left for 2 other junctions, one of them being the one they wanted, and this bit of the M25 is 4 lanes wide, continuing on to get north. This stupid Mercedes A-Class decided to do an emergency stop to pull across. I thought they were braking because they'd gone over the speed limit, as a lot of people seem to do. So if I'd cottoned on a second earlier, things might have been a little bit more comfortable. But in a nutshell, that Swace is narrowly avoided by probably, I'm trying to think how they would describe it. Some generations might describe it less fag paper, basically. But it's narrowly avoided being written off, because I know what you might say. Well, if they pulled to a stop and you were stopping, then one, I wasn't sure I was going to stop. I've never, even when I drove the Aston Martin Vantage, which is a 1975 car, no electric assistance, I did not have to apply the brakes that hard. I've applied emergency stops in the Swace when I first got it to get used to the sensation of what it would be like if I ever had to stop from that sort of speed. Well, not that sort of speed, 30, 40 miles an hour. And the car's pulled up nice and quick. But when I've done that, there's just been me in the car. not stuff for going away for a weekend and another person. And let's be honest, me and Sarah weighed probably the same as 4 people. So effectively having the car doubled in weight with people in it. But nonetheless, Patrick Swayze surprised me and pulled up in just enough time. Like I say, couldn't get a fag paper probably between the front of my car and the back of the other one. So we're talking millimetres before making an impact. We nearly got written off because I thought the Swace had a function on it. Maybe it does if I had a Carly OBD thing, and it might do it. I don't know. Where if you stamp on the brakes hard enough that the hazard lights come on to warn cars behind. It didn't do that, so the Range Rover coming fast behind me didn't cotton on either that I was having to do an emergency stop. But because I was having to keep the car stopped and Sarah was holding on for dear life, she couldn't hit the hazard warning light. I was trying to keep the car straight, so I couldn't, put hand off to stick the hazard lights on. So we've gotten unbelievably lucky. And what's infuriating is just after the service as well. The car had been serviced on the Friday. This accidentally happened on the Sunday. It's as close as I've ever come to an actual shunt. I've been close before, but this is hands down the closest. And maybe it's because we made the stupid mistake of watching things like 24 Hours and A&E when we were away for a weekend recently. Just browsing shit on the TV, basically, because the weather was crap and we couldn't go out. If we'd hit the A-Class, that I would have been stuck, and the Rangy coming behind would have come in fast. So, to my mind, good case scenario, or the happy path, if you can call it happy path, that's a work term we have to use. Happy path in that would have been A&E with broken bones. I don't think we'd have walked out of that without a broken bone. It's made me really appreciate how good that car can be when it comes to stopping, as I demonstrated in the 19-month review I think I did a little while ago, and how good brakes are on an automatic car, and also just to add to it to sort of make you. It's one of these things. Some people say stop, you're going to make your anxiety worse, which I have enough at the moment flashbacks for whenever I have to hit the brakes on the A14 at the moment. It just makes my heart flutter a little too much. Makes me think that part of its service, it had to have 2 new back tyres, which, it had done nearly 27,000 miles. I think it was just a shade over 26 when it went in. So the back tyres had done their thing, but it makes me wonder, if I didn't have 2 new fresh Continentals on the back, even if I'd gone for something like some Falcons or just some even cheaper brand that fit, would I have actually hit it? Would I have stopped in time? It's one of these things, it's like, oh my god, it sort of can keep you awake at night, and it's one of the things that they tell you in anxiety management is to not think and focus on this sort of thing too much, or things like this that would trigger your anxiety, which for a long time afterwards, God knows what I tried, still trying not to focus on it, but it got me so much afterwards that I hadn't, and that you don't cotton on how much adrenaline's running through your system at the time. I had whiplash for a couple of days afterwards. I had a sore leg for how hard I was pressing the brake pedal, because I gently banged my knee in it when we got home, and if I'd banged my knee any other time, probably would have been oh god damn it, and that's probably, even to that tone of voice, it probably would have been ow. But this was a full on, I lost my temper full on when I banged my knee when I got home, and Sarah and I had a very rare argument, which not proud of, not my finest moment at all. So yeah, it's been he's been Patrick Swayze, he's been a bit of a lifesaver in some ways recently. Not sure much else could have stopped us any faster. I don't think if we'd been an equivalent BMW, Skoda, Land Rover, Jaguar, Volvo, you name it, I think we'd have all pulled. Actually, maybe the Volvo might have pulled up ever so slightly sooner. Maybe. But in situations like that, it doesn't matter whether it's the doesn't matter what you're driving, it's the speeds involved. But something you might all get a little giggle out of. Watching it back though, I am truly terrified because I could see how fast the Range Rover was closing in, and it was greasy, and I had to get the car to re-accelerate quickly. I let out quite a scream when I saw how fast the Range Rover was closing in. So never going to share that footage because probably rivals a little girl that scream, but I was absolutely Code Brown situation. So what else has been going on with the Swace recently? Well, it's on a couple of very long journeys. Reasonable miles per gallon, we're still getting pretty good, 56.7 at the moment. Now that average is taken from when I bought the car, not from any recent journey. So it's a 26,500 mile average. Sorry, I've just been doing meal prep. I don't know how well you can see that. Chili. Not the best chili, as in I've had to cheat and use a... Oh, good grief. I'm fucking up my phone case here. I've had to cheat and use a jar, but I am going to make that properly one day. So that's for Sarah's night shift, and my meals for the next few days when I'm not having to have these. But there we are. There's no other way to put it. The car's still... It's still suffering from a lack of power. It could really do with more. Not a lot I can do about that. We got a... George! Georgie! Easy! Good girl. Sorry, I hope these videos don't dissolve into me just showing you my cats, but they need the attention. The car itself has also been subject to Sarah learning to drive in it from time to time. Should be more often than it is, but it isn't. It should be more often than it is, but it isn't at the moment. It's just... Well, when you're teaching someone to drive, you don't want to teach them the bad habits. I'm happy to reinforce what she's learning, but I'm not willing to teach, if that makes sense. I'll teach by reinforcement, not teach by this is how you do it. But obviously there's been a topic a few times on previous episodes around the Swaces. I've mentioned sort of decreasing amounts or rather increasing chances that I might replace it, and that peaked recently. Now I got an email out the blue from We Buy Any Car, and they reckon they could offer me a really good price on this car. The problem is I had nothing to compare it against. So when the car was serviced, I spoke to John Banks about an A-Cross for my dad to see what I needed to see one on site, because obviously that's an ongoing mission, and that doesn't seem to be going anywhere at the moment. But I asked about an A-Cross because it might be just small enough. But dealer was quite nice to say, actually, I think you'd have the same problem in a few months' time. Anyway, I had the conversation because I needed something to compare it against. Now, the car itself, as we sat on the 27th of October, was about £15,000, about, I'll say, I round up to 15.5, because I know it was less than 15.5, but I know it's more than 15. Had about 15.5 outstanding on finance. The car itself is worth about 14. Now, the newer models of this, the 2023 model of the Swace, has got quite a bit more power to it. So this one, so this is a 2021 model, is listed as having 108 PS. The new ones have got 143, which I think would have made the difference when I was up in Yorkshire, because there's a video that I start recording that's just never going to come to existence now because it's so far gone. When we were there, the car struggled going uphill, because I assumed because of the gearbox, it struggled going downhill. I'd forgotten about the B option for the engine brake. Someone on the Swace forum I'm a member of on Facebook had posted about it the other day, and was like, oh shit, I could have used that whilst I was there. That might have helped. Look, in retrospect, that might have actually helped me a bit more around there, but ultimately it was still a lack of power that was the fundamental problem. Now, I don't mind giving a car some welly, but I don't like ragging it because it needs ragging, if that makes sense. There was one point I was in sport mode, so the throttle was as responsive as it could get. We were going uphill, my foot could not have been any further to the floor. I did twice come off the throttle to make sure I hadn't stemmed over and I was actually on the brakes. So I sort of placed my
I wasn't on the brake, but I lifted off just to make sure in case I'd, accidentally doing it. And I double checked to make sure I hadn't accidentally set a speed limiter, and the car was just struggling. And at times, it didn't know whether it wanted to try it in electric-only mode, which a couple of times when it punted itself into that, it actually had a better time of it going uphill. But it didn't seem to combine it all. And I was fueled with 99 run, not 95, so I did have that little bit. It was fueled with E5, so I had a little bit more power over E10. But it just couldn't do it. Couldn't and wouldn't do it at times. However, I'm not up in North Yorkshire very often, but Sarah does want to go again for another holiday at some point. And it's something the car's got to cope with again. Potentially maybe additional people with us, whether that means, and you can mean, because obviously I've said multiple videos, we're wanting to start a family, whether you're taking that to mean as there might be a child, whether born or not, at that point. Currently not, but there could be the extra weight of that, and if the next time we go we've had the child, then there'll be extra, if nothing else, there'll be the extra weight of just baby gear. Never mind anyone else who wants to tag along with us, like my brother, or if Sarah's family want to come along. There are problems with it. And when we got back, I did go and see Volvo and Land Rover, because I was going to see about getting this changed to a Discovery, because I thought and also on the site we're on the Haven site, Wrighton Sands, the bit where we were on, the bumper was so close to catching everything. Ultimately, at times, this car is maybe too low. I'm discovering that more and more at times, and it's sort of a case of I maybe wish I had a tiny bit more of a boost of something like a Skoda Octavia, maybe even a 3 Series. But I've not seen this next to a new Shape 3 Series to see just how close to dragging the bumpers are, or they're actually same problem, different badge. I suspect if I went with Volvo, assuming they were still doing estates, but if I bought one of the old estates, old as in most recent ones before they go off the market, I think I'd have the same problem. The current Shape V60, the current Shape V90, I think it would be different badge, same problem. And definitely the same problem in the Toyota. But the conversation I had with the salesman has got me thinking about whether I should replace this. And I'm really torn. Because like I said, when I bought this, I was buying this with the intention to take it all the way to the end of its finance, and then potentially buy it after that. But the near miss I've had, in the time I've had this car, I've spent £800 on a bumper, £10 on a rear towing eye. Within that 800, I should specify that was also including the front towing eye, bumper attached, sprayed, good job done, etc. But still, £800. Was that £10 for the rear towing eye? I had to pay £100 to get the front windscreen replaced. I will remember which direction is front in a second. The front windscreen had to be replaced. Now, granted, that was through my insurer, and it was a small price to pay compared to if I had to go and buy it without the auto glass cover. But still, £100. Front tyres, 226. Rear tyres, another 226. Having to pay up my service plan because I did so many miles in the car when I first bought it. Not through choice, because when I bought this car, I worked at the Bury St Edmunds branch. That closed from where we lived. That was 5 miles one way. 10 miles a day, 70 miles a week. We're taking Sarah to work probably 140 miles a week at most. I was then rapidly moved to the Stowmarket branch, which suddenly was 20 miles one way, so 40 miles return trip. And then suddenly that's, you're going to see my bad math, 200 miles a week just to go to work. And then I was moved to Ipswich when the trains started striking. And there'd been too many times where the trains were delayed or didn't turn up. And I was fed up of waiting for trains, even though my company were paying for them. So I just started claiming the petrol and my parking instead. But that then became 35 miles one way and 350 miles a week. So in all the costs, I've had to pay up the service plan early. One time I had to pay in 120, and another time, this most recent time, I had to put in 59. Now, don't get me wrong, Gary at John Banks Suzuki in Bury, he sorted me out a new service plan, because there is a out-of-service warranty that Suzuki do, which this car now falls under, as in it's still within its manufacturer warranty, but your service plan with your dealer has finished. And I've paid for it, because if I do choose to keep this car, that's 3 services and the MOT that I haven't got to dig into my own pocket for, aside from any parts that may then be required, but the labour and so on is covered. I then nearly had to have the rear brake light replaced because, well, this car took a dunking during all the flooding. The high-up brake light just stopped working. It's now working again, and I can only assume a ton of water got in the electronics. And then whilst we're talking about the dunking, let's talk about the dunking itself. I was on a road, taking the main road out of where we live, the Berry Road. I was going uphill, and then near the Nelton turn-off, I saw that we were queued all the way back from... there was some roadworks all around about itself, and I needed to get to the A14. Now, there's another way where you cut across and go through a small village called Rougham, or the outskirts of it, and I decided to gamble. Even though it had rained, I thought, worst case, this is going to be some big puddles. How wrong was I? Started off, yeah, a bit more mud, had to be a bit more careful. A couple of big, long puddles, but not deep puddles. Sort of puddles I love splashing through anyway. And then I got to this turn, and it came downhill. And then, oh shit, I saw as I was coming down the hill, because it's the corner itself, there's a farmer field there, so a lot of water had come off this farmer's field anyway. And the corner itself sort of dips down, turns right, and it sort of dips even more as it turns. So it actually filled up quite a lot. I wanted to back out of it and go, fuck, I'm going to have to double back. I'll happily double back, but nope. Person in a Peugeot 5008, a stupid fucking SUV, had pulled up behind me and wouldn't reverse. I'd asked him nicely, and then I asked, well, if you're not comfortable reversing your car, I'll happily reverse it and bring it back down to where you are now. My car just can't do this. And their attitude was very, well, you chose to buy that car and you've chosen to come down this road. Even the man's wife in the car was starting to come on my side and be like, look, he's asked nicely, he's offered to do it for you. And he was like, nah. So I had to take this car through water that was nearly as deep as the front badge. And then as I was going around this corner, I saw a Ford Ranger begin to come the other way. He wasn't stopping. He just ploughed straight in. I had to dive to the left, mid-water, come to a stop. So this car not only got dunked by having to go in water deeper than it wanted, I'd pushed my bow wave successfully. Another bow wave came this way. Short answer, the fucking number plate got pulled off. I had to fork out 25 quid. 25 fucking quid for a new number plate as well. In all of that. Thankfully, the car kept running because it went through on its electric mode. The petrol engine had thankfully chosen that was the right time to switch itself off. And when they got it up on the ramp at John Banks, they said that the cover for the oil pan was just holding on by a few turns. It was nearly come off. So thankfully, that is all that came from that dunking. But when I've told the guys at Suzuki and the people on the forum as well how deep this car was, everyone has said the same thing. I am lucky this car is still alive. And I'm still paranoid that I'm going to pay for it because of those shitty people. If that Ranger would have just waited a bastard moment, I probably could have gotten out with my number plate intact and I would have still freaked out and worried about having dunked it, but there we are. It's only my paranoia about the front bumper that made me even go check about the number plate. I wouldn't have thought twice if I'd never had the bumper come off and if I'd never had the problems with the bumper continuing to lift after it was replaced, I'd have never gone and looked. So it's one of these things where part of me feels like the amount of money I've paid out for the Swace, Patrick Swayze, the Suzuki, whatever you want to call this car, I've forked out a lot of money. And with the increasing cost of living, the petrol's not saving as much petrol as it could. So am I better off trying to find a conventional diesel or just a better MPG petrol? Do I need to be hybrid? But then I don't do the mileage anymore. Most days now, if I go anywhere, it's to take Sarah to work, which is about three and a bit miles one way. So I only do 6 or so miles. Maybe it does that it does 6 miles. I'd say if we averaged it out, it does 6 miles every day of the week. It's probably all the miles I do these days. Not factoring in when I have to go up to Newcastle for family obligations. So this car has gone from being a high mileage, on the way to being a high mileage hero, to borrow the car throttle description, to being sort of a low mileage, it's going to sort of gentrify, I suppose. Because as it is, it's only averaged 13,000 a year so far, and that average is only going to come back my way. But my quandary is, do I change and get something with a clean slate, all the history I've got with this car? Not that I dislike this particular car at all, but the quandary I find myself in is in 2 years, so that in 23 months, I've got the balloon payment for this car, because I bought by personal contract purchase. I've got about an 11 grand balloon payment. Bit of me is thinking, do I just bite the bullet, refinance a loan I've got, take out the maximum 25,000, do this, tidy up a couple of the bits of finance I've got to tidy up, as in, you know, if the cost is the same as what I'm paying now, then I might as well do that, as in, if I can get the numbers to line up, I might better off taking a small increase on the monthly outgoing for the car, but reducing my net outgoings as a whole. And there's a lot of argument to say, why not? Because this car, if I was to buy another one, it's gone up 5 grand. For the, it's not called an SZT anymore, I think it's called the Motion model. But if I wanted another one of these, I've got to pay another 5 grand on top of what this should have been. So this was 23, 24, it's now about 29. It's not a £29,000 car. I hate to sound like I'm going to shit all over the Swace, but the Swace is not a £29,000 car. A £29,000 car, in my mind, is a high-spec 3 Series, or a high-spec Volvo, a reasonable spec Mercedes, or, you know, 30 grand cars used to be things like your 5 Series, it used to be things like your V70s, well, it'd be now the V9, well, the now dead V90, or be your, not Phaeton, what was the big Passat? It will come to me. There was a saloon a little bit bigger than the Passat, but not the Phaeton for a while. I'm thinking, or am I thinking of the Passat? Anyway, you know, or your Skoda Superbs, Audi A6s. That's the sort of spec this price that this car is aiming at. Now, some would say, "Oh, get with the program. The cost's gone up, living's gone up, so on and so forth." And yeah, everything has gone up, and not rightly. I have not, in all brutal honesty, had the full benefits of owning this car, because petrol went through the fucking roof when I bought it. If petrol had been at the price it was when I was running my Baleno, I think I would have made a fair bit of saving week to week, but I haven't been able to enjoy that. Not been able to have that. So my 2 years with my just over 2 years, so what is it, 25 months now? 24 months? Nearly 25 months with the Swace. I suppose in many ways I'm more confused than ever with what to do with it. Because, as I've said at the start of this video, this car has just recently saved my life, and it, in many ways, if I was in a financial position to change the car, I kind of owe it a stay of execution. Kind of owe it to put it off. But, at the same time, it's cost me a lot of money along the way. And then do you go, well, actually, you need to keep it because it's cost you a lot of money along the way? Like, yes, it has cost me a lot of money along the way, so I might as well sink some more into it. Or do you get rid of it I'm getting rid of it because it's cost me a lot of money along the way? I needed tyres on this thing after 18 months. My work were never going to pay for that. They said, well, you got it back because we paid for your fuel. It's like, great, but all the wear and tear? You're not covering reasonable wear and tear? They argued, what I suppose with the mileage thing and my work, they argued down to the 0.001 of a mile for my expenses. Why? When they're the ones who can't retain bloody staff. Patrick Swayze's cost me a lot. I do still think it's, don't get me wrong, this has had it's a bit of a whinge. I'm needing to vent a bit, and it's been a while since I've done one of these, but I need to vent. The Swace itself is still a fantastic car. Don't get me wrong. Still fantastic. Not worth the money, but nothing on the road brand new is worth the money. My dad spent 25 grand on a fucking Fiesta recently. To be honest, I think he was had, and the dealer saw him coming and didn't do him any favours, but Fiestas as a whole have gone up before they went off sale. your standard little Swifts. When I bought my Baleno and my first Swift, the Baleno was a shade over 10, the Swift was under 10. My sister, in her first generation turbocharged Swift, that cost just under 10 grand. You're looking at 15 to 17 now. The Swift is not a £5,000 more car in that time. It's not like it's got more refined, better engine, better gearbox, things like heated seats, heated windscreen. It's still the same Japanese efficiento box, so I'm trying to think of a Curtis Japanese word, and none of them seem, as in making words together, like an econo box, for example. But it's still, or Euro box. It's still a utilitarian. That's probably the best way to describe it. It's still a utilitarian super mini. It doesn't need to cost that much. The seat on this car is still really comfortable. The heated seats are great. About to go into another winter, so the heated windscreen should start to pay dividends again, like it did last year. I haven't got to worry about getting this out of a tight spot, or as tight as that. I don't miss doing that double U-turn reverse. I really don't miss it at all. I've made improvements in how I drive in this thing. I use eco a lot now because I do mostly town driving. I start using the B function on the gearbox to get a bit of engine brake. I suppose what bugs me at the moment is a lot of this is I'll be most likely keeping the car, but not necessarily because I'm choosing to keep the car. It's because what I want is out of my price range, or they're just taking too long to come into the country, or they just won't make it anymore, and I have to drive a annoying SUV. Granted, people say, well, if you had an SUV, you wouldn't have had that problem in the water splash, would you? And no, I wouldn't necessarily. But you're also making the assumption that half these SUVs you see on the road have actually got all-wheel drive, and they don't. They're just two-wheel drive shitboxes in many ways, and terrible choices for vehicles as a whole. They're not as practical as their compatriots, but that's another story for another day. But as we are, let's try and calm down a bit. Probably conclusion number 4. Sorry for droning on like a wet towel. 25 months with the Swace. It's cost me a lot of money along the way. I still get brilliant service from the dealer I use at the moment. Still get great after service from them. The car itself is practical. It's comfortable. Could do with a better tailgate. The back space could do with it. The back seats could do with being a tiny bit more legroom. It's been a reasonable car for Sarah to learn to drive in, as it's been easy to drive, but it would just I'm not a very good passenger in the first place. I want to keep this car because I want to keep it, not because I feel forced to. If I had to redo this video in a year's time, I would say I would be forced into keeping it. But with how some people are driving at the moment on the road, I've had so many impatient drivers overtake me in speed limits when I've been doing the speed limit. I'm more concerned at the moment that this car's going to be written off by other people, and that most recent episode on the M25 has just gone to show it. It may well happen, so long as I'm not the one who's done the writing off, and I hope to God that I'm not the one that does the writing off. But the Swace is still recommended by Velocity Kinetics, long and the short of it. Anyway, like and share the video, give us a subscribe, give the Facebook page a like, keep an eye out for a crowdfunding that we're going to start to do the NC 500, and drive safe, look after yourselves. We'll see you next time.